Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another Audience Lab DAS sales workshop. Now, just to be set the tone and the objective, today's is a little different agenda than most. If you guys either saw my post earlier this week or you're piggybacking off last week's workshop where I told you what we were going to be covering this week, as opposed to more gearing this one just around sales, sales resources, and all that stuff, this is all going to be geared around knowledge gaps. So for any of you guys that are new, or this is your first call, or you weren't on last week's workshop, I can pretty much guarantee you this is going to be one of, if not the most impactful and powerful workshops I run all year. I probably only do I probably do about two free total knowledge gap analysis breakdown, workshops throughout the year. And I can't remember the last time I did one in the Audience Lab group. I may have never run one in this group. If so, it was probably well over a year ago and probably to nobody that's still on this call or in this audience today. But just to give you a little recap, knowledge gaps are kind of the foundation of our initial business. Before Audience Lab was ever Audience Lab, myself, Jesse, and Adam, the three co-owners, also have another company called PDocs. Again, for context, stands for pains, desires, obstacles, common beliefs, and steroids, also known as attention grabbers in the marketplace. Now, PDocs is an overall communication methodology used throughout anyone's business, specifically geared around messaging, offer creation, message optimization, market feedback, and really how to make any high ticket offer successful. Some of you guys may know we've worked with over 3,000 clients in our PDocs brand as well. And over 78% of them, when I did polls and feedback, and what was the most impactful segment or aspect of PDocs was knowledge gaps. They all told me, and my clients, the knowledge gap analysis, Ray, made the biggest difference in our business. Helped us dial in our message, helped us dial in our offer. It's what made us the most money. All these things are what I hear most. And I refer to them often, in stuff we do here at Audience Lab, but a lot of people aren't familiar. So I'm going to dive into a full knowledge gap analysis breakdown here today, and I'm going to make sure there's time for a Q&A. So as we're going, if something comes up and you have questions more specific to your offer, something a little different, whatever, jot it in the chat and I will get back to it, or just jot it down and hold. And at the end, I will call on you and you can unmute. But I kind of have a lot of stuff to go through. I must say, I'm pretty excited for today. Again, I had just kind of prefaced this by saying I run about two of these per year on average. Most of these are in my PDocs community, very rarely into the Audience Lab community. But I have a feeling this one's going to be the best just because I've been an expert at it for more years doing it this time. I have more resources and proof, I would rather say, or testimonials and case studies of knowledge gaps to share with you today than I've ever had to share in any previous workshop. So I expect this one to be one of the better ones. But what I'm going to do again, dive right into it. Anybody just hopping in, I know I just admitted one or two people. Today's session is an overall of an overview of a knowledge gap analysis exercise breakdown, which I guarantee you, I don't care if it's selling Audience Lab, if you combine this with another agency offer, if you have outside coaching or high ticket offers, this is going to be relevant to everybody on the call in some way, shape, or form, as long as you sell stuff online or you sell products overall. Heck, this even works offline, but we'll get into that as well. So I'm going to screen share here and I'm going to start going through today's lesson. And again, if you have questions, please either jot them in the chat as we go and I will get to them. Or if it makes sense, maybe I'll stop mid-lesson and answer some, or just jot them down on anything you're taking notes with and save them toward the end of the call. And I'll make sure to get back to everybody. So first off, I'm going to go over a couple slides in my PDoc slide deck to explain knowledge gaps. And then I'm going to show you a bunch of great, awesome, what we call knowledge gap analysis boards, which we usually use the software Miro for. So if you can kind of see in my browser, I have 3 Miro boards up in this browser. I have 2 in another browser. I have a lot of resources to share. But first, I just want to go over 6 or 8 slides very, very quickly so everybody has an understanding. What this one says to start. To create engagement, and again, if you are piggybacking off last week's lesson, or you might want to go watch last week's workshop, I'll show you guys where you can find the replays that I always post. But we talked about our ECO script, which stands for engage, assess, assign, call to action, and obligation. Within the ECO framework, the assess framework, the assess portion of that specifically is really where the knowledge gap comes into play. A little bit in the assign phase too, but if we don't assess properly, we can't assign the right knowledge gap. That will all make sense as we go through this a little more, but again, just context to anybody that attended last week. And as we noticed when I said engage, assess, assign, call to action, and obligation, the first one is engage, right? If we can't create engagement no matter what we're doing, paid ads, DMs, organic posts, emails, webinars, whatever it is, if we can't create engagement, we're never going to get to the assess, the assign, all the other parts. So obviously it starts with that. And knowledge gaps are even used in the engagement phase. I always like to say, and I have a little different definition myself than is on the screen, so I'll say that and then go through the slides. But I believe knowledge gaps most effectively and most simply put are entry points into the market that you can use in conversations with cold, warm, with really any audience. And it's really knowing when to use the right message or the right knowledge gap in the right conversation with the right person. So again, that should make sense as this lesson goes a little further, but I like to give kind of my own definition outside of what's written here in black and white. But let me just go through this real quick. Again, to create engagement, we need to shift our thinking from what information do I need to convey to what questions do I want to ask my audience. And that is going to be one of the biggest foundations of everything we go through today. So keep that in mind. What questions do I want to ask my audience? Hopefully you're asking this to yourself and you already know the answers and what you ask people first. If you're thinking about this to yourself and you're not sure of this, make sure you're paying very close attention to the rest of this. And we do so by creating knowledge gaps, taking problems people already know, and then creating an unexpected solution that creates curiosity, intrigue, and an actual need to close the gap and where they say, hey, I want to find out more, right? So once you have the knowledge gap, your content, your messaging, all that will generate more replies and better engagement than probably what you ever thought possible when you initially, reached out to engage with X amount of people. I think we all have an expectation of how many people are going to, reply or raise their hand, and how many are actually going to be interested, or how many are just doing it out of, we get those nice replies too, right? Well, sometimes we'll cold email or we'll cold DM, and somebody might reply saying, oh, thanks for the message. Doesn't mean they're actually interested, right? So that's what I mean by actually getting engagement from people that you're messaging. Dozens of people will be yearning to close the gap that we've just created. So how do we create a knowledge gap? One, we identify a specific problem and or challenge that's facing your prospect. Number two, we break down the counterintuitive problem and create what's called the unexpected solution. And then all you do is combine that challenge with the unexpected solution in what's called a knowledge gap sequence. So remember this: prospects and in our marketplace, when we're doing marketing, I don't care if it's paid or organic, I don't think it differs here. People are always in defense mode. They're getting hit with ads, they're getting hit with offers, they're getting hit with discounts, they're getting hit with promos, they're getting hit with overpromise and under delivering, which leads to, they've been burnt by other agencies, consultants, service providers, etc. And obviously what I just said goes in play with the last one there on my screen, constantly being spammed with pitches. I never lead out with a pitch, and that was part of what I talked about last week that led to this lesson. I was talking about poor DM messaging, where somebody's first message to me is a pitch and solving a problem for me when they don't even know if that problem exists in my business. Like, I never like to pitch people before I assess, which goes into the whole eco framework. This is what kind of a knowledge gap analysis looks like, guys, and I'm going to get much more in depth. Obviously, this is a screenshot. I have the full boards up and lots of examples of where that screenshot was taken. And this was, again, for our PDocs private clients in the past. So where it says in prep week, that doesn't necessarily apply to you guys on this call, but a lot of our clients mapped out every possible scenario on how they can help their prospect. And doing this, they uncovered several knowledge gaps. I always like to say most and a solid knowledge gap analysis that I do for a private business, whether it's my own or a client, I usually come up with somewhere between 6 and 10 knowledge gaps. I like to say 8 is kind of that sweet spot. On this particular screenshot, the knowledge gaps are all the yellow boxes below about the halfway point where I'm kind of hovering my mouse. So in this case, there was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 knowledge gaps. Again, that kind of fits right in that bread and butter. Now, there are more complex or less complex, and I'll explain that, and I'll show you some examples, because some clients always like to overcomplicate things. And as individuals, we can probably all at some point in our life say, man, I certainly overcomplicated that situation, or, that formula, or how to get to this result. We've all done it, right? And we probably still continue to do it a little. So that's how we kind of dive into this. And what we do out of those 7, in this case, knowledge gaps, is we try to pick out the one that's kind of our main entry point, meaning one of two things, generally speaking. This one is either applicable to a majority of our audience, say 50% or more, or we know this one is kind of the number one problem my audience is struggling with, and this is kind of the biggest talking point that is going to engage my audience. Usually we can kind of pick a winner right from the beginning, And as I've said in the past, usually when I do this for a client, I come out with somewhere between 6 and 10 knowledge gaps, let's say 8. I would say 75% of the time, maybe even higher, at least 75% of those knowledge gaps, those messaging points to use in the market, they were never even aware of or weren't using, right? So you'll be able to use this to ultimately create story-based bios, openers, content, all kinds of different ways that we can use knowledge gaps. So again, let me show you the formula that I talked about a moment ago really quickly, where I talked about the challenge, the unexpected solution, and combining those. Let's keep a very a generic one here. Let's say the challenge is breaking past 25K months. Let's say the real problem, which we kind of know as providers or people that help people bust past 25K months, is people do not know how to scale organic prospecting, prospects, and just jump right into paid ads too soon. Meaning, what a lot of people are taught early on, and I remember certain people went down this path when I got started back in 2019, 2020. Hey, Ray, once you start hitting 10K months organically, that's where you take some of that profit and start reinvesting into paid ads and start growing your business with a combination of the two. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Personally, I think it's wrong at that point. I don't like to start to reinvest into paid things in my businesses until I'm well past 20 to 25K months personally. And that's a blueprint I've stuck with pretty darn consistently. But again, there's not necessarily a right or wrong there, but it is certainly a good knowledge gap because almost everybody's being told this. Hey, I just need to hit my first 10K month and then I can start running some paid traffic. That might not be the best way to go. And a lot of people blow away their profits and their budgets. They don't know what they're doing. You can switch from organic to paid kind of seamlessly. If you have a process and you're familiar with knowledge gaps specifically, you're going to see how that kind of ties into paid stuff down the road. But a lot of people really struggle with that right off the bat. And they're two different beasts in a sense. I do think the best businesses are using a combination of both, and I'm sure you guys see that in Audience Lab. We run paid traffic, we run email organization, we run organic workshops. We're just now busting out organic content on a multiple platforms. So combinations are always helpful, yes. But again, the unexpected solution is teaching a sales team how to crush organic marketing to scale past 25K months. So then your overall knowledge gap in this case with this problem and this solution might be I help agencies scale past 25K months by teaching their sales teams how to generate their own leads organically. That solves a big problem. So again, just breaking this down into the two parts we constructed on 2 slides, 3 slides back, the big struggle or challenge is agencies are having trouble scaling past 25K months. The unexpected solution, most people are going to tell you start running paid ads, or you should have already been running paid ads to break that. We're going to say, hey, by teaching your sales teams how to generate their own leads organically, which is going to offer a lot of value. So once you have your knowledge gap, you can begin to then build it into all kinds of different content avenues and channels. And what I'm going to go to next is what you're going to see on my screen here. This is our main knowledge gap hub for private clients. So you're going to see on the left side of my screen, I can zoom in a little, Michael and Jerry, Christian and Amber. Those were the first knowledge gap analysis and boards we ever did for private clients back in 2020, before Audience Lab was probably even a thought. Definitely wasn't a company yet. We might have been discussing it, but I don't even think it was a thought at this point. Actually, I know it wasn't when we ran our first couple. But regardless, you're going to see those are the first two. And then as I scroll through, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of different clients that we've done private knowledge gap analysis for. You're going to see
Whoa,
some, and I know I'm going kind of fast. You're going to see
what
some with a lot bigger and more
is
yellow boxes,
it?
and some with less. And that's kind of what I was talking about when I said more complex
What
or less
is it?
complex knowledge gap analysis is. Now, I don't know if that's plural.
Oh,
I probably said that wrong. And I was just thinking of that, so I'm glad I went to it. I remember this is a private client I've worked with in a few different capacities, and we're still friends. And he's actually he runs the Bible study group I attend every other Saturday. So Jay and I are still pretty good friends. But I remember how much he overcomplicated this, and this is what I would call a very overcomplex knowledge gap board. So I'm not going to use it as an example. I'm going to use that as the example of more what not to do. And that happens for more people that are overthinkers. And I would say more people that really don't disqualify much of their audience, the people that think or feel like their offer can work with any and everybody. Um, I I haven't found one where I find that to be true. And even if it is true, nobody has the capacity to take on every client in the world. What's our population currently? 7 or 8 billion worldwide. So even if you think that, let's be realistic. We cannot help or work with everybody. I think the sooner you kind of realize who's my ideal client and how to assess and qualify or disqualify for that is where you start getting somewhere. So I'm going to hope to have time to go back and show you a couple examples from some early ones we did, some different offers. But what I want to start with is the knowledge gap board that's probably going to be most applicable and most relevant to our DaaS
Mm.
clients specifically. And this is one that Adam had built out for Audience Lab and for us and our reps to understand. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to go through this one. I'm going to go through one thing first because I think the context will help you guys understand this one. And Adam made this one a little bit complex because he's Adam. I'll just leave it at that. Adam does that. I will simplify everything more. A lot of the way Adam and I have worked together over the years is Ray. I just created this awesome thing. Can you go simplify it so people can actually understand, digest, and implement it? Because Adam's great at what he does and he's a genius. But I talk to a lot of our clients where 80% of what he says is going over their head because he's at such a high level. What I'm able to do is simplify into more layman's terms, right? I'll agree. Some of what Adam does goes over my head, right? I'm not saying you guys are alone there. And I think we've all worked with and learned from some people that are like, man, this guy's just talking at such a high level. So this looks really, really complex. I'm going to simplify. This is a full PDOX motherboard. This is everything about the PDOX program and everything about running through it. We're going to focus on a little sample size. So if you see where the hand of my mouse is hovering right over here, I think we can all agree this is at best maybe 1/20th of the screen. Well, that's all we're going to cover when I zoom in here. And this is going to be the first overview of a basic knowledge gap analysis. Now, again, let's go and break this down how a knowledge gap plays into the eco framework. Kind of, again, piggybacking a little bit off last week's lesson. It's something you've heard me talk about. Engage, assess, assign, call to action, and obligation. The assess phase is where you're seeing the knowledge gap board here. And let's just go with a very generic one before I show you our data one and what might apply more to more people on this call. But I think understanding the basic layman's term ones before we go into Adam's complicated one will be beneficial for everybody. So let's say this is our ideal audience we're talking to first, where I'm hovering my mouse. Somebody that's launching or optimizing their high ticket offer online. Very generic, probably fits into a lot of the people that we work with, generally speaking. So as I said earlier in one of those slides, and the thing to ask yourself and the thing to really pay attention to throughout the rest of this session is what questions do I want to ask my ideal audience to qualify or disqualify, or so I can then assign the right messaging point or the right knowledge gap when I want to go speak to them and kind of get their attention, right? As we talked about, the knowledge gap is to create intrigue, curiosity, to be an unexpected solution. So they're going to kind of want to fill that gap and say, hey, how do I find out what's next? So in this case, we said, hey, I want to know if the person I'm speaking with, I really want to work with business owners doing over 10K per month. You have to remember to do a knowledge gap analysis for yourself. Everything has to be binary. You can't ask a complex question with a subjective answer. It has to be yes, no, over, under, up, down, left, right? So binary solutions every time. You can always do this if you just figure out about how to change your question of your phrasing of what you're asking. You might be asking them like, hey, have you lost 20 pounds in the last 13 days, right? That's very, very specific. It could just be, and overall in the last month, are you over or under 15 pounds lost? Yes or no, right? So again, we can get very specific and then we can get more vague. And in this case, you want to keep these all binary. So let's say we are looking for people doing over 10K months. What happens to the people that say, no, I'm not doing 10K? Well, next I might want to ask them a further question before I disqualify. And if they're in like a high ticket coaching space, I might want to ask them, have you had success coaching clients in the past? If they say yes, I'm going to say, well, what's the reason you haven't started a group coaching online yet? Is it due to not knowing where to begin, or is the technology overwhelming? So again, even though this is more complex, I only gave them an A or B, a yes or a no, an over and under. It's still binary. And depending on what they say, that might drive them back right over into another knowledge gap that you're going to see as I go through this more. But let's just go through again our less qualified person. And as I say to every business owner I work with, some business owners have products and offers and other things to offer for those under 10K people. Some people are only working with business owners making over. And again, 10K might be a low threshold for some of you. I just picked that number very objectively for people, looking to help people with coaching offers. That was always kind of the golden goose metric that I think is a little maybe overhyped, that whole 10K month thing. But that's been in the ethos for as long as any of us have been online, pretty much. So if they were to say no right now, I've never coached clients in the past. Is that because you don't have the expertise or you don't know how? If they say they have no expertise, as I've always said, I can't help a client who can't help their clients. So that's an automatic disqualify, pretty much in many things I do. Now, I think with Audience Lab and a more software and agency based products, we can actually still help people without the expertise, but they have to be able to do something and provide something to their clients. That's why they're in business, right? So again, we've all worked in the coaching space, or if we have, maybe not we all have, I can speak from experience. And I've worked with what we would call wannabe coaches. They're like, yeah, I'm a coach, but no, I've never actually worked with anyone and I've never actually delivered results. I can't promise I can help that person. So the moral and right ethical thing for me to do is disqualify and say, hey man, what I do with these people personally now, in the past, when I made this knowledge gap board, it would have been a Facebook group. Now it would probably be a school community. But hey, you don't have the expertise yet. In my free PDocs Facebook group, we teach people how to build out the fulfillment and actually how to charge and how to build a business out of this. If you want to come and get some free help, or hey, I don't know much about data and I'm not running any paid ads and I don't get a lot of traffic to my website, so I'm not sure if Audience Lab's a fit. Well, you might want to check out our free DAS Audience Lab school community, where, when you do build up to the point where you're driving more traffic or you're ready to invest in paid ads and scale your business, you can always come in here and, follow what we got going on, attend some workshops, yada, yada, yada. So again, we might have free communities more for our unqualified or our disqualified, or what I like to call a nurture audience. Now, some of us don't have those infrastructures. That's fine. It's fine to disqualify. It's fine to only work with your ideal audience. The person could say no to your first question and you might not go any farther. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, let's look on the right side of the knowledge gap analysis, more down the box toward our ideal client. If we ask, are you doing over 10K months? And they say yes. Again, what's the next question you would want to ask? Now, I would want to ask if they're charging high ticket pricing personally, but that's a subjective. So I picked a number. Let's say I call 3K or more high tickets. So now I ask, are you charging at least 3K? Let's say they say no. I know that's usually for one of two reasons people aren't charging high prices. Is it due to fulfillment? You don't think you're delivering enough to charge that price? Or is it due to lead quality? Ray, my audience would never pay 3K or more. That's what most people think. Those are the number one and two reason why people don't charge high ticket. I'm not delivering enough value to charge that, or my audience won't pay that. So let's say they said fulfillment. Hey man, the knowledge gap for this person might just be, what if I could show you how to turn your expertise into a group coaching model on Facebook, where you can target, when you can charge high ticket prices in a group setting rather than one-on-one. Or they might say lead quality. What if I can show you how to create an offer that solves a bigger problem, so ultimately you attract an audience that's willing to pay to solve a bigger problem? Would that solve your, oh my God, that's exactly what I need right now. So for each one of these, what I like to say is, as we go more and more down this and you get more and more yes answers, that's where you're going into your more sophisticated, more established audience. You're going to say something totally different to them than you're going to say to this guy who's never charged high ticket prices before, right? And that's what people don't sometimes understand about their marketing, their messaging. They think what they have to say, their hook or their angle, applies to everybody. I can almost guarantee you there's a few different variations, if not multiple or dozens of variations of how established people are that you're speaking with, about the foundations that they have, about the problems that they've already overcome or the problems that they're facing. I guarantee you there's a variety of them in all of our businesses. So each one where we can kind of drop them into a box and say, okay, this guy falls into this box. This is my entry point to the market. He falls into this box. This is my entry point to the market. So on and so forth. Let's go through one or two more of these, and then I'm going to dive into the more data applicable knowledge gap board. But now, if this guy told me, okay, I'm over 10K months, I am charging high ticket, I want to ask, are you enrolling at least 4 clients per month? And let's say he says no there. Well, now I know it probably comes down to the amount of appointments he's getting per week, because he's charging high ticket. He's over 10K months. Why isn't he rolling at least 4 clients per month? I mean, to get to 10K, just the simple math is 3K, right, times 4 clients. That's what you need to get over 10K. Now, to that point, if I'm getting very, very specific, we only asked if he's charging at least 3K. Maybe he's charging 5K and he only needs 2 clients per month to hit 10K, right? So there are variations, but what we almost know is he's not enrolling at least 4 clients. How many appointments is he getting? So next I would say, and again, I think this one's wrong. I got to go in and edit this. This is in my edit board. This should be per day, but are you getting at least 8 appointments per day? No, maybe this is per week. The next one should be per day, correct? 8 appointments per week. That would actually be fair. 8 appointments per week. Let's say 4 weeks in a month, 32 appointments. If you were getting at least 8 appointments per week, 32 per month, there's no reason we shouldn't be closing 4 clients. I mean, we're talking what, a 10% close rate at that time? at that point, basically, that should be a given for any established business owner with a very good product and a good offer. So let's say he says, no, Ray, I'm not at least getting 8 appointments per week. Well, how many conversations are you having with ideal prospects per day? This is the one where it should be per day. If I'm having at least 10 conversations per day, there's 50 per week. There's no reason that shouldn't lead to about 8 appointments or more. Okay. Again, bare minimum 10 per day, bare minimum 5 days a week. Could be more than 10 per day, right? Could be more than 5 days a week. Some of us work 6 or 7 days, but I'm just saying bare minimum 50 conversations for me, especially if I've targeted and I know I'm talking to the right people. No reason that shouldn't lead to approximately 8 appointments. But hey, are you having at least 10 conversations per day? No, Ray, I'm not. Well, now I know why you're not getting at least 8 appointments. Don't you know you need to have consistent conversations to book appointments? And then our knowledge gap for this person. What if I can show you where to find and how to generate 10 qualified conversations per day using organic methods? That would solve his problem right now. We just diagnosed it down to a very simple problem that probably most people didn't diagnose it down to, right? Let's say they stay over. Now I know conversions is the problem. Now I know these guys are having at least 50 conversations per week, but not converting 8 appointments, right? So, hey, knowledge gap. What if I could show you how to convert your current conversations and engagement into qualified appointments? Would you agree, Bob, that it doesn't really matter how many appointments or conversations we're getting in if we can't convert the ones that we're already having? Well, yeah, Ray, that totally makes sense, right? So again, now if we were going down, he said, yes, I am generating at least 8 appointments. Now I know right away the close rate is the problem. We just did the math, right, guys? 32 appointments per month minimum. And he's not at least closing 4 clients, which means 3 or under, right? He's at less than a 10% close rate. So now I can automatically say, hey, is the reason for your low close percentage due to the quality of leads or the objections you're getting? And that's what every business owner thinks. It's one of those two. In some way, shape, or form, it likely is, but it's also a little more complex than that. A lot of people are like, hey, Ray, it's just quality leads. Nobody can afford my stuff. That's probably not accurate. They probably just haven't done a great job diving into sales conversations. And that could even be partially because of overcoming objections. But if they right now tell me, hey, Ray, the reason for my low close rate is because the quality leads and nobody can afford my stuff. What if I could show you how to build out a pre-qualifying micro commitment sales process for your leads so you know only the ones that get on the sales call can actually afford your stuff? Boom, that solves their problem right now, right? Or if they say, hey, it's actually objections. Okay, well, next I want to ask, is it you, Mr. Business Owner, taking the calls? I'm guessing, 30 conversations, less than a 10% close rate. I can almost always assume that this is a business owner, but I hate ever assuming. I just want him to tell me. And every once in a while, I will even get a solopreneur that says he outsources his sales call to a sales rep, or he has 2 or 3 guys or whatever. So next I want to know, do you have a sales team or is it just you? It's just me most often. All right, well, what's the common objection you're getting? Is it price or is it another one, what I would call an hindrance, right? And we could go through all those. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but let's say it's financial. What if I can show you how to dive into finances and overcome financial objections to the point where your prospect is actually showing you his bank balance on the screen? Do you think that would help you dive into finances a little better and really understand their objection? Oh, heck yeah, it would. Or it's always a hindrance. Well, now I can show you, hey, what if I could show you how to pre-frame your prospects through your inbound messaging, post in groups, ads, whatever it is with this person, where we can actually overcome the objection before you ever get that on the sales call. And there's plenty of ways to do that. So again, in this particular board, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 knowledge gaps. And then each one of those would transition down into its own next level of the script. Access to the Miro boards. I can share some of these with you guys, and if you guys want some of these, DM me. This one, as I talked about, is for my private students in my PDocs group, and this one is like super in depth. As again, all I did was cover less than 1/20 of this here on this particular call. And just to be fair to people that have paid for this in the past, I feel wrong about giving it away to people that everyone in the past has had to pay for. So this is one I can't give away, but there are quite a few I'm going to go through. Happy to share multiple with you. Any of that are internal resources just for us, 100%, right? But again, in the knowledge gap analysis side of things, each one of these knowledge gaps then goes down into your eco script, into the assess phrase, frame, or aspect of this particular thing. Remember, engage, assess, assign. I'm sorry, I said it wrong. Goes down into the assign frame right here. And this is the overall. Now, this is just a very generic script, but I could pull down this knowledge gap, and let me just bring one example. Let's say How to convert your existing conversations. Let's say that was the one I picked out. I would go down and put it into this framework. So once we've kind of assessed that they're having trouble converting their conversations, I'd say, hey, Bob, do you mind if I weigh in on this? No, Ray, I don't mind at all. So I deal with this quite often. And it sounds to me like the reason you're having problems actually getting consistent appointments booked is because you're unable to convert the existing conversations you have. Would you agree? Yes, I would. Cool. Well, what we do when we work with our private clients, and this is where I inject the knowledge gap, we build out eco scripts so you know how to convert with your prospects. And every conversation you get in, you know how to disqualify or convert them into a call to action. You see, where most people go wrong, Bob, is they're not converting their existing conversations. They just double down and keep thinking they need more leads, more conversations. When the real problem is, if I can't convert a conversation now, how am I going to convert more of them? Does that make sense? Right? And I always get a frame of acceptance before I go further. I always break these down into three categories, which is listed below. Strong, medium, or weak frame of acceptance. Now, when you do a knowledge gap analysis, right, when you've assessed where they're at and then you assign the right frame and inject the proper knowledge gap, it's almost always going to make sense. It's going to be hard for this guy to tell me, no, Ray, I don't want to convert my existing conversations. I just want to keep having more and keep not converting them, right? Who's going to really say that? Nobody. So they're going to be like, oh, yeah, you're right, Ray. That does make sense. That's what I would consider a strong frame of acceptance. And then I would go into the next thing in my eco script and then start to do my call to action. This is C within the eco script. I would say, okay, man, I think I can help. Let's do this. Let's book a call. But first, I want to send you over this simple free training that shows you how the last 5 clients I worked with dialed in their messages and turned their past conversations into now converting these. So you can understand that. Then on the call, I can answer any questions you have about that little training, and then I can build out how it would work for your business. Does that sound good? It's very hard to say no to that one as well. So again, that's the kind of foundational aspect. Now, guys, I'm going to go through some more complex stuff, and I'm going to go through a full knowledge gap build out that I did for a private client of mine with all the eco scripts built out, not just the generic framework and me saying them with them all built out. But first, I want to go into the copy of the Audience Lab um, selling data knowledge gap board. And let's say we're going more toward the pixel to start, although this will tie in and go into the paid side of things and the audiences and all that as well. But let's say we want to start, and a lot of us are starting conversations with this question. And if you're not, this might be a very good one to do, especially if we are leading with or selling the superpixel, the identity resolution tool. How much traffic do you have to your website? Let's say we start with just like the $10,000 per month, 10,000 visitors. Okay, now let's say we're speaking with a business owner that's like, Ray, I have less than 10,000 hits to my website. Okay, so the under 10K, what's the next question I want to ask them? Are you already, or would you be open to investing in paid ads? Right, so I want to find out if they're currently running or willing to run paid ads. I think you can do both in one question there if you word it a little different than Adam did here. But would you be interested to invest in paid ads? I don't care. It doesn't really matter how you word it. I think we're both kind of saying the same thing. Let's say they say no. Well, what's the reason for not wanting to run paid ads? Is it not being able to? I don't know why this got cut off there. Hold on a minute. That's weird. I can't read the last line and I don't want to screw this. Give me 1 second. Yeah, huh. For some reason. So is it due to not being able to find the target online, or is it due to, I'm going to guess what he would have said there is, I'm almost positive by what it's saying below here, is it's something you're not too familiar with and you haven't done it before. So that would probably be most common there. I don't know why that one's cut off. That's the only one I've seen today in any of these boards that was cut off. Okay. And then let's say, well, I don't know how to find my target audience, right? Let's say that's their problem. We all know that's exactly what we want to hear from people, right? That's exactly what our platform does. So if they say they can't find it, hey, are you more B2B or B2C? Cool. I'm more B2B. B2B, I would recommend running our B2B to C funnels, or B2C, I would recommend a hyper targeted audience that we can build you in house. And then again, I'm going to show you, Adam went through and built out the full next session, the assign frame for each one of these knowledge gaps. But I want to go through quite a few of these before I just go down to the answers. So cool. Now let's go back and say, yes, I am, or I would be interested in running paid ads. Cool. So do you have any ad account data to show previous winning ads and angles and offers? No, we would probably do a full scale audience test. And I'll dive into that a little more for anybody that's not familiar. Some of you probably already know what that is on this call. If they said, yes, I already do have winners, good. Let's go run some isolated tests with our in market audiences with the angles you already know that are winners and establish which one is getting the best ROI on that campaign. That's where we would start with that person. And again, I'll go back into the next segment of this. Let's say we got more of our ideal audience. They said, yes, I'm already over 10K website visitors. Cool. Now, is your website conversion rate at least 3%? Now we're kind of gauging what, guys? How many bounce visitors or the anonymous traffic they have with this question. Now, we can't just ask what's your anonymous traffic because that's going to be a variable for everybody, but we can go look at the average conversion rate on the average website and say, hey, are you at least over or under this? Let's say they say, no, we're under. What is your cost per acquisition and is it profitable? Next, let's say they say no to this, like my cost per acquisition is $100, but my average order value is $86. That's not profitable, right? So they would continue on to say no. Is this an average order value under $100? Let's say they say yes, just to my last example there, $86 or whatever I just said. And what we would kind of say is, all right, well, that's fairly normal as a majority of the profit is on higher AOV offers come from the retargeting. And then again, I don't know why these got cut off, and I'm sorry for that on this particular board. I think he's trying to say, and what I just kind of brought up, is the CPA higher than your average order value? And if it says yes, let's go to hyper retargeting. So great, we already know that you're not profitable on the front end. Let's retarget people where we should get a cheaper cost per acquisition because these people are already familiar with your brands. They visited your page, et cetera, et cetera. And if they say no, we go into the basic retargeting plan. And again, I'll go through those in a little more depth. I want to go through 2 or 3 more of these. Let's say we get the more sophisticated client who, yes, Ray, I'm over 10,000 hits. Yes, Ray, my site converts at over 3%. All right, that's a cool conversion rate. Are you profitable with your current cost per acquisition? Let's go into the no box before we go back down to the yes to the left side of my screen. No, I'm not profitable. With that high of a conversion rate and not profitable, it must be the cost of ads. What is your current cost per lead, cost per click, cost per acquisition, whatever their main metric is? And let's say they have a low CPM and a profitable CPA. That must mean the audience ads aren't resonating, or the audience isn't resonating with the ads you're running. What would you say is the reasoning? And then again, Adam, I think overcomplicates these, which is why all the other ones that you're going to see that I've built or built with clients are a little simpler. I think in 2 of these, at least that I've noticed, he got a little wordy with this and kept it hard to keep that A or B, that very binary. Now, I know exactly where he's coming from and why he's doing this, because he doesn't want a million knowledge gaps to pop up, and nor do I. And this one, he took a little more in depth, which is great, though. And again, so this person, if they said yes, like my not profitable, it must be the cost per ads, what is the conversion rate or the cost per acquisition? And he said, yes, that is a problem. Next, we would kind of say, ouch, okay, when you go into your frequency inside the ad manager, is it over 2? And then we can either have audience burnout, which we've all seen, ad fatigue or audience burnout. I think that's a combination that we can kind of, Adam kind of put into one thing, or I would say more likely with this person, their audience is not targeted specific enough, right? They're either, checking the box that says, let Facebook find my ideal audience. It's a rather new campaign and not a lot of testing has been done. Or they've tried to use Facebook's in-platform native targeting parameters, which, as you guys know, if you run ads, I think is down to 5 parameters now, last time I was in there. So you can't get very, very specific. Your audiences are pretty broad or vague if you're just using in-platform native Facebook targeting parameters, the custom ones that they give you. So let's go down and look at 1 or 2 of Adam's eco scripts. And I want to take it back to more common things like hyper-targeted audiences. That's a very common one. So I want to go down and look at the one he used there. Again, I got to see how many he did. Hyper-targeted audiences looks like it should be number 2 or 3 on the board. B2B, so this one should be it. Exactly. So cannot find your audience. So what we would say is, hey, once we kind of assess that they were in this box, right? So go back up to where they're at, under 10K in traffic, not yet running money on ads, not really willing to spend money on ads, and feel like they can't find their ideal audience. That's where we're at, and they're more B2C. Okay. So now I'm going to go say to that person, hey, do you mind if I weigh in on that? No, not at all. The issue is that Facebook and other ad platforms only give their public interests or audiences, right? Which every advertiser has access to. So the main way to win is a higher budget. Our data solution tracks over 30 billion keywords, and with those we used to build audiences based on searches without paying AdWords. It's called making a custom in-market audience. See, where most media buyers or agencies mess up is they rely solely on interest on third-party data ad platforms. So they will always be competition. They will always be in competition with somebody else and on their budget. Does that make sense? Again, I think I would have worded that a little tighter. Adam's a little more wordy with these. I still think it's going to make sense to 9 out of 10 people though that fall into this bucket. Again, I would have worded it a little differently, but that's a very solid one. Now, let's go and look at say one or two more of these. Anybody that like uses the enrichment feature or maybe sells that to clients, right? Sometimes the lowest hanging fruit for your less established person, not spending much on ads or nothing, not getting much traffic. Sometimes like, okay, well, have you at least been working in business for a few years and have you accumulated an email list or an SMS list or a list of past buyers? Yes, we have. Cool. What if we could start by this? I can take your list of 10,000 emails, run it through my company enrichment filter, and on the back end, not only will it spit out the email, but it'll spit out the first and last name, the SMS number, perhaps the LinkedIn or Facebook or social media, handles for these people if we have that data, and then we reactivate them and hit them on another platform. So just because they're on your email list is great, but we all know, Bob, that on average, emails get about a 20% open rate. From there, they get about a 3 to 5% conversion or click through rate. So what I know is the sheer math shows me when I hit somebody's social media, LinkedIn or Facebook inbox, the open rate goes up from about 20% in email to about 67% in social media. And when I hit somebody's SMS inbox, the open rate goes up to about 87%. So just by taking your existing list and then putting that through SMS and social media, we should get 2 to 3 to 4x the amount of eyeballs on your existing message. Would that help your brand right now? Boom. It's very hard to say no. 2, 3, 4x the amount of eyeballs seeing my offers, seeing my messaging would not help my company. I don't know. I can't say that honestly in any business I'm running. If next week, 2 to 3 to 4 the amount of eyeballs I got Audience Lab stuff in front of, I can guarantee you our sales would at least 2x, if not higher. So again, that might be the low hanging fruit and where you want to go. But that's a pretty good knowledge net gap analysis board through data, through in-market audiences, enrichments, understanding where their problem is based on traffic, spend, click-through rate, cost per acquisition, some of the main things we talk about. And as I went more and more into this, I think again, Adam overcomplicated a little, but you saw we got into some pretty established businesses that are getting significant traffic, that are getting good conversion rates, that are willing to spend money. And the problems down here for those guys are way different than the problems over here for these guys not yet running ads, not yet driving much traffic, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the same in many knowledge gap boards. So this one is a great example of a knowledge gap board I did for a private client that hired me to do a done for you team build out. So she not only is a solopreneur business owner, not at all. She has a team, multiple, coaches, people on fulfillment, people on her staff in terms of doing outreach, DM setters, et cetera. She has a handful of a team, but they never had an approach like this to her business. And when she came in working with me, we built out her knowledge gap analysis. I still believe this is one of the more complex ones. And the reason being in this particular offer, guys, is she can pretty much help or work with anybody and has products. Like I said, that guy who's not yet qualified, or I might disqualify, she has those nurture communities, or she has those $7 products. She has stuff for almost anybody. When you work from everybody from a $7 ticket price to a $17,000 ticket price, you're probably going to have more knowledge gaps and more things to assess. I actually would have simplified this one a little more, and I did. Her and her team, and it's her business, and I recommend everybody do this, came and expounded upon my initial knowledge gaps, and they added more. Any place where you see like a K is something that she came in and added. And there's some other ones I don't think that are showing up. But there's a few that any of these little boxes here that are in different yellow, a different shade of yellow, those are things that she and her team added. So they came in and added to the initial knowledge gap thing, which is fine. But for every knowledge gap, we mapped out the correlating eco script that goes with it, what I say to this person. And again, I use these scripts, guys, when I build them in every type of outreach platform you can think of. I use them in email. I use them in cold messaging. I use them in warm messaging. I use them in paid ads. I install eco scripts. I might do it a little different. In a paid ad, I can kind of do it all in one message in 60 seconds, whereas a DM or an email thread, there has to be a little bit of a back and forth, and we have to get answers to some of these things. Normally, if I'm injecting this into somebody that's clicked on one of my ads, by clicking on one of my ads and just seeing the creative and getting sent to the next page, I've already kind of put them into a knowledge gap and pre-qualified them. Otherwise, they would not have been going into my call to action page. Again, generally speaking, I think in every offer, we're going to get some BS traffic, somebody that clicks on your thing that you can't help. But in this particular case, my client's name was Kara, and I asked Kara, "Hey, what's the first question that you would ask an audience?" This is never one in any of my businesses that I started with, so even right from the jump, this one was different for me. But again, she knew the question she wanted to ask. She had an established business. She just didn't know all these knowledge gaps. And her initial thing, she liked to work with people that had an existing brand was her ideal client, but she had products and offers and trainings for people who hadn't yet. Okay. So, do you have an offer or brand? Let's go down her less qualified person that says no right off the bat. What do we want to ask them next? Well, next, Ray, I want to know if they're an expert or a coach. Okay, let's say they say no to that. Are you or your mindset holding things back? So, another big difference between her and most of my programs and offers. I don't have a big mindset component to most of my programs. That's somebody that has a limited mindset or doesn't think they can achieve that. Personally, me and most of my offers, maybe all of them, I would likely disqualify. Her having an expert mindset coach on staff makes perfect sense that she might ask a mindset question here to disqualify because she can still bring them back in under that. Again, different for me. I wouldn't do that personally. But are you or your mindset the thing holding you back? Let's say they say yes. Knowledge gap zero. They need help creating a growth mindset by eliminating baggage and establishing the right beliefs. Again, not something I work with people on, something she does. Now, this would be her only disqualify if they said, like, no, it's not my mindset holding me back. I have a perfect mindset and I'm not an expert or coach. Again, at some point, we have to disqualify people. As I said earlier, and I'll say a million times, if they can't help their client, how can we help them grow their business? That's always a question we should be having and making sure we're working with experts or credible service providers, et cetera. Okay. Um, let's say they said, initially, no, I don't have a brand, right? But yes, I'm an expert or a coach. Are you certain you can deliver results? If they say no, she's going to invite into her free group and she has a whole nurture process and workshops and calls to action in her setter team. So she has a whole process to then convert that guy in approximately 30 to 90 days, depending on where they're at. So that was great. She still had something for them. Or if they said, yeah, I'm certain I can deliver results. Well, do you want a six-figure brand or offer? If they say no, again, I might disqualify because I only work with people that are trying to grow a major business. But anyway, I think, again, and this is her business and her question. I don't think I would ever ask that question next. And I see why she did. But do you want a six-figure offer or brand if they say no? Is that because you don't believe it's achievable? No, I believe it's achievable. I just don't want that. She would probably disqualify or refer over to a trusted resource. And then she even put in one or two people that she might refer this people to, which is something I also recommend. If I disqualify a prospect out of my funnel because they're not yet at the point where they're ready to work with me, they don't have the foundations, whatever reason, a lot of times I'm going to either refer them to a free group, a free training, or maybe an outside colleague or expert that might be better suited to help this person. I'm not always the best suited to help everybody. I'm perfectly fine with that and well aware of that. The sooner you are, I think the better you are in your business. It's actually very liberating when you have no problem disqualifying someone and say, hey, go talk to this guy. He's better suited to help you. It's actually a very great feeling. There's nothing wrong with it, right? And if they said, yes, I believe it's unachievable, she's going to go back to kind of, hey, mindset slash value of transformation that you're offering and how big of a problem do you solve, right? So you would see more about that if I go to that knowledge gap down below to the next layer of the assign in the eco script, and maybe we'll get down to that. But I think that also makes sense as to what's happening there. Now, I want to go to her more established person and see some of her I would say more predominant or more used knowledge gaps for more her ideal audience. So yes, I already have a validated brand. Next, she asks to see again. This is always trying to what question do I want to ask to kind of see how established and sophisticated this business owner is. Are you at least over 10K months? Let's say they say yes. Although in Kara's offer, I remember the data being about 64% of people would say no to this. So let's go down one. Since she got more no's than yeses, she did work with, again, what I just say 64%? So 36% of people were already over 10K months and had their own brand. Some considered their offer or their company a brand, but they were still low revenue, right? So next, she was very similar to me. Next, I want to know if they're charging high ticket, right? Well, what is that number to you, Kara? She's pretty much in agreement with me that around the 3K is maybe the threshold for a high ticket offer, 3K or higher. So Are you at least charging this? No. Okay. This is going to be very similar to what you saw in the other one. Are you charging below 3K because you're unclear on how to charge more? Yes, I'm unclear how to. Hey, what if I could show you how to craft a high ticket offer that can double your prices without doing more work? I think we've all heard that one, and luckily she gets in a little more depth down below. I personally think that one's kind of vague and outplayed. No, they do know how, but they're just not charging that. Well, what I think you need to do, Bob, is you need to identify and solve a bigger problem in the industry so you can actually attract ideal clients who will invest hefty, high ticket prices into solving that pain or that problem. Oh, shoot, that totally makes sense, Miss Kara, right? So great. Now let's say they said, okay, I'm under 10K, but I am charging over 3K. Have you validated your offer with high paying clients? If they say no, what her company does is, hey, you haven't validated it. Let us help you build out an organic ethical marketing system that you can use to generate 6 to 8 high ticket appointments per week and collect feedback so we can validate this thing. Hey, that totally makes sense, Kara. Boom, that's what this person needs right now. Or, yes, I have validated it. Well, are you able to book consistent calls? And is that kind of the problem? No, I'm not able to book consistent calls. Hey, they need a streamlined pipeline, right? And then down below, her knowledge gap dives into that some more. And now let's look through 2 or 3 more, and I'm going to make sure I leave time for a Q&A. I might go a little past the hour, but I don't have anything next. So if you guys don't have a hard stop, the Q&A might go a little over. But let's say this person is over 10K a month. Next, she kind of want to know is, hey, do you feel like you've maxed out your growth organically? We know you're over 10K months. We know you already have an established brand or offer. And this is a very good question. Not what I would ask here personally in my company, but it's a very solid question. And for her company, it probably made sense here. Because she doesn't do much with paid. She helps companies get above 6 figures organically, which is cool as heck. Not a lot of people are doing that. She does it very well. So I totally get why her brand asked this here. But have you maxed out your organic growth and not sure how to continue to scale? She would get yes. This became one of her most common ones and probably her most common one for that 36% that I said are a little more established. Outside of this, her other most common ones were number 4 and 5 really were the two most common. So we'll go touch on her scripts real quick before I dive into the Q&A. But let's say this one, right? Hey, yeah, I've maxed out my organic growth. Hey, what if we could show you how to automate and systemize an organic marketing approach to scale and eventually leverage paid ads once you crush 30K months, 50K months, whatever that number is for this person, right? That would be a real good one. Or if they said, no, I don't believe I've maxed out my organic growth. Okay, cool. So you're taking at least 10 sales calls per week? No, I'm not. You need to set up your system to qualify prospects and increase your conversions of your amount of sales calls. If we're not getting at least 10 sales call per week, it's going to be very difficult to scale organically past your X number, whatever that is in this business owner, and on and on. So I highlighted number 4, 5, and I think I said 8 was a very common one for her, right? Yeah, definitely 8 was a big one for her. So 4, 5, and 8. So let me go down and look at some of her eco scripts based off number 4, 5, and 8. Okay, so in this one, this one's not validated the offer if you guys remember the knowledge gap. So, hey, Bob, do you mind if I weigh in on this? No, Ray, go ahead. Hey, what I think you need is a simple system to get conversations happening with your prospects to ultimately validate your offer. See, what we do is we teach our private clients how to use a process called ethical marketing, which is an organic outreach process, but much faster using some tools and frameworks that I provide for you guys. You see, where most people goes wrong is they spend hours creating content, or worse, they spend time and money on a website or even on social media that doesn't actually create a consistent pipeline of leads. Does that make sense? Boom. And then if the strong frame of acceptance, they dove into everything. Within each one of these, you guys will see that we also inject a resource. Like as I mentioned in the example I gave about the consistent conversations. Hey, Bob, let me show you over this resource showing how we help 5 other clients just like you build out those conversations and ultimately how to convert them. So like in this one where she talked about, remember number 3 was like charging a higher price, double your prices without doing more work so you can ultimately scale faster, right? This was a very good knowledge gap, very good angst built in. Then down below, when it makes sense and they say it takes action, great. Let me show you this training on how we help our clients double their prices overnight without doing more work. And then book this call with us early next week where we can map out some time and show you exactly how I can implement this strategy into your business. Does that make sense, right? Boom, boom, boom. So I wanted to go through 5 and 8. Number 5, the pipeline one. So number 5, it looks like she did 2 versions. This one she said 5 referral, which looks like it's updated in green and maybe a different author on her team, Yulia, just by the notes here. And I think this was the main one that we came up with. So streamline pipeline, right? Hold on a minute. So what I think you need is a simple system to get some conversations happening with prospects to validate your offer. We teach clients how to use a process called the perfect pipeline, which is organic outreach, but much faster using some tools and frameworks. So this one has a lot of similarities to the one before. Where most people go wrong is they spend hours. She didn't even change that. So that one's very similar. Let's look at this one was relevant to that or not. They need a proven model for code. No, this is a totally different one. This is something based off referrals that they added later. Number 8, which I know was an important one for her, um, is that number 8? Oh, number 8's over there. That one's just unnumbered. It might be a duplicate. Yeah, that one was when we needed to convert, right? So it sounds like you need to convert your organic skill into a system you can scale. What we do is we teach our clients how to do this by automating our system and systemizing the engagement, and then teaching appointment setters to navigate the conversations effectively to book consistent calls. We call this our team formation, our team formula. Where most people go wrong is they try to scale the skill set they have rather, or they don't even have the skill set, but they try to scale the skill set they have with organic, which isn't very repeatable, and you can't transfer down to your team, right? So that never turns into a scalable system. What we show you do is how to take this skill, build it into a framework that any average VA or appointment center can go implement, right? Boom, boom, boom. Does that make sense? So again, that's a more in-depth knowledge gap board. Didn't have the time to go through it all because I want to make sure to save time for a Q&A here. I'm happy to share a couple of these knowledge gap boards, our internal one. Actually, one more thing I'm going to do, and again, I said I don't mind going a little over. Something I said earlier in the session is I'm going to pick out one or two of our very early ones that we did for clients. And just Shiraz, I remember, I still have this guy's testimonial. He had a very basic one where we only came up with like 4 knowledge gaps. I mean, he went and did like 100K in the first handful of months working with us. But I don't remember this knowledge gap analysis. I do remember he was in real estate, and now this is ringing back bells. But I just want to go through one or two of these real quick and kind of let's break down what happened here. And again, these are 4 or 5 years removed for me since I probably looked at this. Um, are you over 350K a year in your real estate business? He only worked with those people. So the people that said no, we didn't make a knowledge gap analysis for them, which is one of the reasons this one was condensed down to 4. He was very specific about who he works with, and that's great. I actually think people that are more specific, this usually works a little better, but it works great in both aspects. As you saw for Kara, who was like helping people just buy a free nurture group or buy a $7 ebook or whatever. So people in that no side of your ideal client, it can still really work. But hey, revenue above 350 per year. So what's the next question I want to ask them? Well, I want to know how many real estate deals they're closing each year. And my clients on average net about 100,000 per deal. If they're over 350K, I want to make sure they're closing at least 3 deals. It might be they just got lucky and closed 1 or 2 big ones, but they're not getting them consistently, right? And that's going to dictate how we talk to the people. So are you closing at least 3 deals? So if they say under, are these large deals and they all coming from one lead source? Yeah, they are. And yeah, they are. Hey, what if I could show you how to diversify your lead source so you're having them coming in from multiple angles and you're not just relying on this one or waiting for the next big deal? Boom. That would be a pretty big one. Or, yes, I am over 3. Are you the only one that's generating deals on your team? And I don't know why in his we didn't put the yes or the no or the over under. But I can imagine if they said, yes, I'm the only one closing them, the next question would be, is this scalable for you? Can you scale this business if you're the only one generating leads? And if they say no, how to scale real estate investing without losing profits. And Shiraz's program was all about how to turn your existing leads into profitable closed business and closed deals in the real estate investing industry, right? He asked certain ones of them, are you generating these deals via partnerships or listings? And depending on what they said, it would be how to predictably gain new partnerships or how to scale without losing the quality of the deals, meaning the volume, making sure we're still getting some of them big deals. So that was a very, very basic one. Um, Courtney's was pretty cool. I'm trying to think of one that might be like most relevant to the average person on this call. I mean, there's no average though. Dylan, I don't remember off the top of my head, but I remembered his being relatively simple. Dylan was just so he was working with, so Dylan was basically people, and again, I think we switched down here by the boxes, whether it was 10K or 20K per month. He's only working with those more established people. If it was under, he left blank and he didn't want to go that route. And again, when I do these custom for a client, I'm always asking, hey, you're underqualified or you're no person off of question 1. Do you actually help and work with this person? If the answer is no, we don't waste time building out knowledge gaps for them, right? How many appointments are you making per month? Over or under 10? Under 10. How many leads are you generating per month? Over 30. So I'm generating over 30 leads, but I'm generating under, what was it, 10 appointments, right? Um, and then the knowledge gap would be how to find people further along with more intent to increase appointments. Meaning, based on this program, what he's saying there is, hey, you're generating a lot of conversations, but not many are turning to appointments because you're actually conversing with an audience that has no intent to book an appointment. Let me give you a more structured approach where you're actually talking with people with the proper intent, which would make a big difference, right? Or, hey, I'm over 10 months. How do you generate appointments? Are you doing SEO or paid ads? And those were the two most common for Dylan's audience. So, hey, I'm doing SEO. Is this only a select few keywords on Google? Yeah, only a select few keywords. What if I could show you how to diversify with instant rankings using map packs on YouTube? So, guys, you can see how this is kind of dated. I'm not saying this stuff isn't still relevant, but it was a lot more intriguing in the market 5 years ago than hearing that today. Hearing that today, that's like a common solution that everybody would say. 5 years ago, that was actually an unexpected solution. So I think it's cool to look back on some of these because you also see the evolution of the digital marketplace and the landscape, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, let me stop share. Let me go look in the chat and see if there's any questions. And as I'm doing that, anybody have any questions? So yeah, Mehdi, so access to the knowledge, the Miro board, since you're the only one that asked, and if anybody else wants access, shoot me a private DM in school, because if 5 of you just comment, yes, I want it right now, I might not remember everybody, but Mehdi, I've already jotted down your name. I'm going to send you over a couple example knowledge gap boards, because I do agree. And I think anybody that found this valuable or wants to kind of, funnel hack what I just did today, knowledge gap hack, and then build out their own. It's really good to have a template or a framework to look at rather than just replaying this call recording and maybe pausing it on a certain screen. So I'm going to send you over at least 2 of them that I went over today that I know I can share, that I don't make other people pay for, right? Again, I do this stuff ethically. If I tell somebody that this is just for a paid community in a different community, I'm just a stickler on sticking to my word. Not that I wouldn't share stuff with you guys. I don't need the money. I'm not trying to sell it to you. It's just more about what I've told the people that have paid for that. I don't want to go back on my word. I just can't do that. So if anybody has any questions today, go type a 1 in the chat right now before we hop off. I can call on you individually. Or if you just want to share something you picked up today, or a takeaway, or something you can go implement, I would love for you to share that before we end here. And I'll give it a minute or two. If nobody either unmutes or types a 1 in the chat, we'll just end here with no Q&A. This would probably be the first time I've ever run one of these and got no questions. So that means I went so in depth and explained everything so good that there's no questions left. And I really did what I said. I made things simple for everybody to understand, as opposed to, maybe some of other teaching or copy or terminology. I would say it's more the terminology sometimes Adam uses. And not just Adam, but there's plenty of kind of high level thinkers. But great, guys. Well, hopefully, and I'd love to hear whether it's today, tomorrow, go drop me a DM, drop a post, make a freaking 30-second little video and send it to me. Just anything that you took away, that why this exercise is kind of impactful, and why you're going to do this for your business. And anybody that does it, maybe even Mehdi, like after I send you over some of the examples, I'd love to see your knowledge gap board and your breakdown and give you some feedback and thoughts on it. And I'm open to do that for anybody that builds out their own knowledge gap board. That's one thing. All the ones I went through today, I either helped do one-on-one with a client, or they paid me to build it for them. Still with them, it's always collaborative. I can't ask the questions a business owner wants to ask. I can recommend and suggest what I would ask, but I still tell the business owner, this is your business. You should know what questions you want to ask, right? And then again, but when people do this for themselves through my trainings, through my tutorials after a workshop, the best feedback you can get is send me over your knowledge gap board, and I can kind of poke some holes in it and say, hey, this is why I don't think this one works, or this is where you should ask the question, or this wasn't really binary, so it's not going to work like that when you actually get into a conversation, and just give you guys some feedback. Happy to do that. Rodney, you raised your hand here. You have a question? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question. And again, I'm fairly new here. I've only been about a week. But I do have a question. This knowledge gap board sounds really good, and I was wondering if you implement it with like a chatbot, or like almost like an AI knowledge base. So like almost like the AI is kind of like responding like how you would be responding.
Great question. So in the past, back I would say in 2020, 2021, we were using the messenger chatbots with our knowledge gap analysis. As AI and agents have become more prevalent, and you know plenty about that, Rodney, that's part of your business, right? Yes, I certainly can use these scripts and these frameworks and these gaps with an AI agent 100%. It's actually going to help them learn and be more effective quicker than they're going to be on their own.
Nice, nice. I thought that was a really
100%. Great question, though.
no problem. Thank you.
I remember the first time I built this out was late 2020 in ManyChat, and that's the first time I kind of automated knowledge gaps, and it worked. I had to go in and do a little tweaking and manual stuff and testing, but I think that's with anything we do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Awesome. Great question. And all right, guys. So, and last thing I want to cover, just super, super quick for anybody, I brought this up earlier in the session just in case. This knowledge gap, again, this knowledge gap analysis today was kind of piggybacking off of last week's lesson. And guys, every single week when I run a DaaS sales workshop, I know this one was more about messaging and knowledge gaps. They're normally sales. But when you go into our school community and click on the sales channel, here's last week's workshop. Will be in here 7 days ago. I bet you, yep, right there. Boom, 7 days ago. Today's will be uploaded in there before the end of today. So again, if you kind of want to learn more about the eco scripts and where this one piggybacked off of and a little bit of last week's lesson and how I covered leverage in your sales process and how that being the big tool to increasing your revenue, that one will be in there. And again, today's every Tuesday when I run these within that sales channel, the replay is uploaded before the end of the business day. So that's all I have today. Thanks for everybody's attendance, cooperation, and participation. We will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.